everyone! In this week's video, I'm drawing whatever the heck I want. I have some projects I've been wanting to work on, and I've also been wanting to do some more drawing practice. So I felt like it was time for another one of these videos where I just draw whatever I want. Also, I want to address something. I've been getting comments from people saying that they don't see the join button to become a member of my channel. I guess YouTube got rid of the join button on iOS devices, but if you use the link in my description, you'll be able to join. So yeah, I thought I'd just let you know because some people were confused. So like I said, I've had some projects I wanted to work on. When I work with the company Vograce, they give me coupons for their store, and my coupon is going to expire soon, so I want to make art to put on products so I can place my order. So the first piece is a book cover design. I really like how my first book design turned out, and I thought it would be cute to have one with a more pink theme. I wanted something that looked calm and cute, so the idea I came up with is a girl standing in like a cherry blossom tree forest area. The wind is blowing and she is smelling a flower, so it has a very chill vibe to it. Like I said, I'm really happy with how the first book design turned out, and I'm planning to order more of that first design because I'm thinking of selling them in my online store. I'm still working with my shop people on my pop-up shop I'm working on. This pop-up shop will have items that are sold and shipped by me. The usual items in my shop are shipped by my shop people and they handle all that stuff, but these items will be handled by me since I'm the one of the products. So like the name pop-up shop suggests, this would be a shop that is open for a short amount of time. I stay pretty busy, so I wouldn't be able to handle running a shop full-time, but I think I could handle doing a pop-up shop every once in a while. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and I hope that I can open it soon, and I will let you know when I do. I have a very limited stock of items because I kind of just ordered these in a low quantity from Vograce, but I do have a decent amount of some items. My first book design was very purple, so I wanted to make this one be pink. If I make another one, I think I'll want to make the main color be blue. I really like blue, but for this one, I try to keep pretty much all the colors in the pink family. But I did add a complementary color, being the light green for the bushes. I feel like the green is a nice color to go with the pink, and the illustration overall still feels very pink. I even made my liner a deep red to help stay on theme. So here's the finished book cover design. I'm really excited to see it in book form. The next item I want to design is a wooden pin. I really like how my Korak ones turned out, so I wanted to make more with a different design. It took me a little while to think of what I wanted to do. I wanted something that goes with the wood aesthetic. I eventually decided on a pin of Pariah and Mr. Froggy sitting on her head. Pariah is an OC I've had for like 9 years, but for some reason I've been talking about her quite a lot more recently in my videos, probably because I keep making characters I feel could live in her universe. She's kind of my only fantasy original character, so anything that's kind of fantasy related gets shoved into her world. I may have mentioned this before in an old video, but when I first created Pariah, I actually made a short comic for her. It was about 50 pages. I had finished all the storyboards and was in the process of adding word balloons, but then my computer stopped working and the story died with my computer. I was very sad, but I learned my lesson. I now make sure to create backup files on an external hard drive. And speaking of that, I should probably go back up my next door neighbors. I haven't backed up the most recent chapters. But yeah, I was very sad that her story was deleted, but the story has changed a lot over the years, and Pariah is basically a completely different character, and so is Carson. So it's kind of allowed me to keep them alive in my head because their story kind of died, but they still lived on and kind of changed over time. But yeah, here's my pin design. I think it turned out really cute and I'm excited to see it in pin form. So the next thing I wanted to do is some anatomy studies because it's something I've been feeling like I want to improve on. So a lot of times when I do anatomy studies, I just find some pics on Pinterest and try to draw them. But I kind of feel like it's not helping me learn all that much since it's something I often do. So I wanted to try to do something new and different, something that could help me think about anatomy in a different way. and I came to the conclusion that maybe taking a class or watching some video tutorials from other artists would help me get out of my usual ways of doing things. So I did some searching for anatomy classes on Skillshare, and I did find one. Also, Skillshare is the sponsor of today's video. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know what Skillshare is. They have all kinds of classes that helped me learn about book formatting, animation, After Effects, and so much more. Whenever I want to learn more in depth about a topic or learn new things, I go to Skillshare. Since I was wanting to brush up on my anatomy skills, I started taking 28-day drawing challenge, Anatomy for Illustration and Comics by Josiah Brooks, also known as Jazza. In this class, Jazza teaches about muscle groups and their functions. At the end of each main lesson, Jazza will suggest a small exercise to help you practice drawing the form and function of different muscle groups. You should take time between lessons to do this work, as it will all build together into your final illustrations. So the first muscle group Jazza talks about are the arms. I draw arms a lot, and I thought I knew a lot about how the muscles work, but I actually learned a lot about the muscles and their functions. I also learned more about how to stylize their shape. Like the shoulder muscle looks kind of like a round heart shape, and the bicep is like a horseshoe. Jazza does a great job breaking things down in an understandable way. I highly recommend it. If you're interested in trying Skillshare for yourself, the first 1,000 people to use the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to drawing. So like I said, I wanted to do something different or something I don't usually do, and I honestly can't remember the last time I did muscle breakdowns and muscle studies. The characters I draw often aren't very muscly, so I often don't feel the need to study muscles all that much. But I thought that maybe if I did it, it would help me with anatomy and also help me think about anatomy differently. So yeah, first I did the breakdown of the arms. I plan to save all of these and the screenshots I took to use as references in the future. That way if I forget things, I have notes that I can look back on. Next was breaking down the muscles of the legs. Also, you don't see it in the footage, but in between each part of the drawing footage, I would go watch the videos from Jazza's class. And then after I finished the videos on that muscle section, I would come back and try to draw things that I learned. So things that changed for how I think of the leg is that the lower leg doesn't have much muscle on the front of it. Its shape is actually coming from the calf muscle in the back. And it seems really obvious, but I think I've gotten to the point where I just kind of think of the body as these certain shapes. And in certain views, they are these certain shapes and they kind of change. But I don't 100% think of it as to why they are doing that or like why they change. I hope that makes sense. It's like I get the general idea of where things bump out and curve in, but I don't completely keep in mind as to why they're doing that. Also, if you do muscle studies like this, I recommend coloring in each muscle. It's very helpful for seeing the form and proportion. Sometimes when filling in the colors, I would see the shapes that I drew would be a bit off in shape or proportion, so coloring them in was really helpful. Next, we have the muscle study of the torso, and this was something very new to me. Honestly, I don't think I've ever tried to draw the torso like this. I never really draw shirtless characters, so I've never felt the need to do in-depth muscle studies of the torso. Also, like I said, a lot of my characters don't have much for muscle. A lot of time they are thin and wear baggy clothes, so you can't even really see the torso all that much. But something I learned from doing these muscle studies is that even if you don't draw detailed muscles in your art, knowing their placement, form, and how they function can be really helpful when drawing. I found that after doing these muscle breakdowns, the way I think about the torso, shoulders, arms, and legs is a bit different than how I thought about them before. Also, because I'm thinking about the muscles and how they connect, I feel like it's helping me keep things more in proportion because I'm thinking things like, well, if this muscle is connected to this one, I shouldn't be placing this all the way over here. It should be about here. So I'm thinking of things like that. So with the help of Jazza's class, I think I've achieved my goal of trying to think of anatomy in a different way and also getting unstuck from my usual ways of doing things. So now that I have this new information on muscles, I want to put it into practice. I'm going to be studying some pictures from the internet, but I'm also going to try a new way of studying pictures. So like I said, when I do Pinterest studies, I often study things like this, but today I'm going to be trying to draw stuff more outside my comfort zone, like this more action pose. So for this first sketch, I'm trying to draw what I see in the picture, kind of like what I usually do. So yeah, this part isn't too different from what I usually do. Some parts I found tricky was this part of the back and also the foreshortened arm that's coming around. I found those parts to be a little confusing. So right here, this is where things are going to be changing from what I usually do. I'm going to trace over my reference picture and compare it to my sketch. I won't make you watch all of this because I'm just tracing the picture. It's pretty boring. But I do want to mention that while tracing, I really paid attention to the shapes of things and how they form. And I was trying to take mental notes on how things worked and how they looked. So tracing was actually quite helpful in a way because I was kind of getting an idea of how things were shaped and went together. So once I have the trace, I'm going to compare that to what I drew. Some things I noticed is that I had the shoulders and hips tilted in the wrong direction. Mine were tilted kind of down, but they should have been tilted more up. Also, I needed to exaggerate the tilt of the torso and how far back the arm goes. So now that I've done the study from the picture and the trace over of the picture, I am now going to study the trace over of the picture and try to recreate it to the best of my ability. I'm going to try to get this as close to the trace over as I can. Also, while doing this, I drew lines coming off of the trace over. Just help me keep things more in proportion. Trying to draw the trace over was definitely a lot easier than trying to draw from the reference picture because I have everything kind of broken down into simple shapes, and plus I kind of learned stuff while doing the trace over. I'll kind of actually do this when I'm creating illustrations. If I have a reference picture I'm kind of using to create my illustration, I'll draw over it to break it down a little bit more so it's easier for me to see the basic shapes and the details that I want to see compared to all of the tiny details getting in the way. So yeah, sometimes I'll do stuff like this for illustrations I'm working on. I feel like I've seen people do studies like this before, but I can't remember where I learned this. I learned it years ago, but it randomly popped into my brain after all this time. So yeah, I don't remember where I learned it, but I'm putting it into practice today. So after drawing with the tracing as my reference, I'm now going to get rid of all my references and try to draw the pose from memory in my style. I do have a little tiny version I can turn on just to help me remember the pose if I kind of forget. But for the most part, I'm going to be trying to draw it from imagination. So now I'm trying to draw the pose in my style, so that means I'm going to try to stylize the proportions. I'm trying to apply the things I learned from my studies, but also stylize things to fit my characters. So the head is bigger and the body overall is kind of smaller and sort of lanky. I did still try to define some of the muscles because I was imagining this character was kind of athletic. For this one, an area I kind of failed in is the tilt of the torso. I didn't exaggerate it enough again, so I think this is a sign that this is an area I need to work on. I need to try to be more comfortable with pushing things and exaggerating how things bend in their movement. So here's a comparison of all the different versions. We have the first study, the trace over, the study of the trace over, and the one from memory in my style. And I think overall from the first one to the last one we can see improvement. So yay! So I did do another study session after the first one. We'll go through this one kind of quickly. I want to try to do studies like this more often because I feel like it was a lot more effective than what I usually do. When you've been drawing for a while like me, I think you can hit a point where it's almost hard to know how to improve or how you should practice to get better. Like when you're starting out or you haven't been drawing for long, almost any kind of drawing or studies will be helpful and help you improve. But with where I am now, I think I might be needing to think more about how I practice and what methods will help me learn even more and help further my knowledge. For this study session, it was a body that is in a perspective where we are looking down at it. And this one was really tricky, but that's good. If it's tricky, that means it's not something I'm used to. One of the parts that I found hard was actually the head. And you know, the body in my drawing looks pretty weird, so that was also tricky. But I almost didn't really understand how to draw the head in that kind of view. But once I did the trace over and I tried to take notes and then did the study of the trace over, I feel like I started to understand things more, especially the head. Seeing the head broken down into the simple shape helped me a lot. So by the time I got to the version where I'm drawing it from memory with my drawing style, I was kind of surprised at how it went pretty smoothly. I highly recommend giving this studying process a try. I personally find it to be really helpful. I didn't get the pose 100% correct, but I think overall I was able to apply things I learned to my version. When I do these drawing whatever I want videos, I give myself a certain amount of days to draw, and this day was my last day to draw. But I actually didn't know what I wanted to draw on this day. As I was trying to think of an idea, I checked Twitter and saw this super cute fan art of me and my characters from my webcomic. I loved it so much and thought it was so cute that made me want to draw a cute picture of one of my characters. It put me in the mood to draw my babies because I just thought they looked so cute. So I ended up deciding that I wanted to draw a very happy Doris wearing a cute outfit. Also, since it's summer right now, I kind of wanted it to have summer vibes. I haven't gotten to draw a super happy Doris recently, so that's why I wanted to go with this idea. To help me make her look really happy, I make the bottom lids of her eyes really curve. I'm also considering adding some little lines to help indicate the lower lid area and how it's kind of squinting. How I render this kind of changed once I add the coloring later. When I started this picture, I wasn't planning for it to be a fully finished picture, but it somehow ended up being a fully finished picture. It's like once I got started, I just kept going. I don't draw illustrations of my characters very often, so I was finding this to be really fun. So in my last video, I mentioned that I wanted to try changing up my line art a little bit. I want to give it a bit more texture and variation. I usually use the G pen for my line art. It's really smooth and the size doesn't change a ton with pressure. It changes some, but not as much as other brushes. I took some time to find different line art brushes. I downloaded tons of different ones from the asset library, and after a lot of testing, I decided to go with this brush. I like how it has texture, but it's still pretty solid. It also really easily changes in size with pressure from my pen, so it gets really big and also really tiny. Plus, it stays the same on each side with a symmetrical ruler. I really liked some of the brushes and how they worked, but then when I would try them with a symmetrical ruler, for some reason the brushes would draw differently on each side. And I think this may be due to the angle settings of the brush, but I'm not totally sure. But yeah, this brush here kind of had everything I was looking for in a brush. So I'm going to be using it for now, and if I end up liking it more, I'll continue to use it. I'm just going to kind of test it out for a bit on a few different pictures and also in my webcomic. Also, it'll be a while until you see the difference in line art in my webcomic because I make chapters in advance. So usually I have a 1 chapter buffer. So yeah, you won't see any change in my webcomic for a little bit. But for the most part, I really liked using this line art brush for this picture. So for the coloring and background, I wanted to have there be a very blue sky filled with clouds. The color Doris usually wears is blue, but because the sky will be blue, I didn't want Doris to blend in with it. So I decided to have her wear yellow and green. I picked these colors because of the sunflower hair clip she's wearing. I actually really like Doris in green. I like how it matches her eyes. I think it looks cute. For the clouds, I'm using the Running Color Edge watercolor brush. I like how it has a soft and kind of fluffy looking texture to it. The clouds were pretty simple. I kind of just made shapes and shaded them with different kinds of blue colors. For the shading, I decided to pick very saturated colors, kind of like I did for this picture. I really like how the coloring looked for that one, so I decided to do something similar for this one. So if you want kind of a more in-depth explanation of this kind of coloring process, you can go check out that video if you want. For the light source of this picture, I decided to have it placed kind of to the front and upper right. This will make the shadows be more on the lower parts and on the left side. At first I was considering doing only more simple cell shading, but like I said before, once I got started, I kind of just kept going. So I added some softer shading, gradients, and also added a variety of colors to my shading, like I did with this picture. This time I try to add more blue to my shadows as an ambient light. Basically the shadows are blocking light from the sun, but the blue light that's from the sky can still make it to the shadow area, so it gets some blue color to it. I really enjoyed working on this picture. It was so much fun drawing a happy summer picture of one of my characters. I liked getting to draw Doris in a different outfit, plus getting to fully render her was a lot of fun. In my webcomic I have to stick with a very simple coloring style, so it's fun using more fancy coloring on Doris. Oh, also I found this really cool sunlight brush that adds like sun particles that you see in pictures, and I feel like it was a really fun final touch. So here's my finished drawing of Doris, and also the other things I drew in this video. I think I say this every time, but I always really enjoy making these drawing whatever I want videos. Like for this one I got to focus on anatomy and work on improving my art, which is really nice. And I also got to draw some art for products, and also some art of my characters. It was a good time. But before we end, I want to say a big thank you to my patrons and YouTube members. I am so thankful for them. Also, I want to say hello to my new patron, Kaloom. If you want access to an exclusive Discord server, behind the scenes content, and more, there are links in the description. Also, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next week in my next video. Bye!